Hello and welcome to the scouting board. We're now on episode 10, episode 4 of season 3. Yeah, so I I believe this is the most episodes we've ever done a season because I'm lazy. But we're off to a hot start. We usually don't start this until combine season goes, and here we are, 4 episodes deep already, way before combine season. Well, I shouldn't say way before, like a month before combine season, but you get my point. We're way ahead of schedule. we're crazy ahead of schedule. Anyways, today we're gonna be looking at our third quarterback. We've looked at so far. 3 out of these 4 episodes have been quarterbacks. We're shaking that up next episode. Don't worry, we're shaking that up. But this episode will be a quarterback, and that quarterback is Stanford quarterback Tanner McKee. He's a 6'6" junior, 230 pounds, coming out of Stanford. Some decent physical traits out of McKee that we'll look at today. I am not the most thrilled guy ever when talking about Tanner McKee. He's one quarterback that I don't have the greatest valuation of. I don't love him that much, as you'll see later in this episode. So we'll get into that in a second. So, first of all, if you haven't listened to this podcast or watched this podcast or whatever medium you are consuming this with, scouting board works this way. We look at the pros of the player we're evaluating. We look at the cons of the player we're evaluating. And we look at the comparison. And then we look at the overall grade that I give the player. So, and then we look at a little bit of film that I'll reference throughout the evaluation of the player. So, without further ado, let's get into Tanner McKee. So Tanner McKee, as I said earlier, he's a junior quarterback. He just declared for the draft. He's 6'6", 230. A lot of scouts have him coming out of the draft and being selected around the second, third rounder. People value him as a guy that can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. The second quarterback that's coming out of Stanford into this draft and has been highly valued in the last 3 years. Davis Mills obviously got drafted 2 years back now. Was a high value quarterback at Stanford and played in the Stanford system and was a prototypical Stanford guy. Tanner McKee very much like that, had very similar career with Stanford and is getting a lot of looks just like Mills had. I would even say maybe a little bit more looks. Even last year had a little bit of interest after his season. So let's get right into the pros. The first pro, McKee's had some quality games. McKee's had some very quality games in his 2-year starting career. Another pro there, he's a 2-year starter in the Pac-12 in a Power 5 conference, so that's pretty good. But he's had some quality games. This past season, he had a really good game against BYU, his last game of his college career. He had 31 completions on 40 attempts for 313 yards, an astounding 77.5% completion percentage and 1 touchdown. That's against a pretty good BYU team. BYU was a pretty decent team this year and was good on defense. So to allow 77.5% completion percentage to a pocket passer, 313 yards and a touchdown, pretty good. Stanford ended up losing that game 35-26, but obviously still a pretty quality game from McKee. Against Cal, a Pac-12 opponent, he had 29 completions on 45 attempts, 271 yards, 64% completion percentage, and 1 touchdown. And against Colgate, he went 22 for 27, 308, with an 81% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And then against Notre Dame, which was a big win for Stanford this year. Notre Dame wasn't the best team ever this year, especially early in the season, but still for a Stanford team that Stanford really struggled this year. So, it was a good one for them. They won 16-14. McKee led the charge, 26 for 38, 288 yards, and nearly a 69% completion percentage. So 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions there. It was very efficient and got the job done against Notre Dame. And obviously, Notre Dame has a lot of 5-star recruits. So it's going to be a good game. You want especially with a Power 5 quarterback, you're going to want them to play good against good opponents. I said this in the last episode with Jake Haener. Obviously, a different situation because he's not getting good opponents every single week like McKee is, since he plays in the Pac-12. But McKee's shown bright spots. What I don't love about McKee, obviously I'm going to get into that more in the cons, is that it's a little bit inconsistent. And that's why I'm not saying consistency with quality opponents here. I'm saying quality games. McKee has quality games. He has very, very, very quality games. His last game of the season against BYU, which I referenced first, probably his best game of the senior season. A 77% completion percentage. I value completion percentage events above all else. Completion percentage is what keeps you in the game. It's what kind of sets the tone for your team. If you have a high completion percentage, that means you're moving the ball, you're getting the ball in your receiver's hands, and generally you're going to get downfield. Now, if you're throwing it backwards 5 yards every play and you're completing it, you have 100% completion percentage. Now you suck. Okay, but so you got to reference film here. You got to know how far they're getting downfield. But 313 yards with a 77% completion percentage, pretty good. He shows flashes, and McKee's whole entire thing is his physical traits. His physical traits is what gets him over the hump. Now, it's not Anthony Richardson physical traits, right? It's not he's going to run it all over the place. He's not super big and fast type of prospect. McKee is your standard tall, lanky pocket passer with a strong arm, right? He's that type of guy. He's what the Broncos drafted or played with after like Manning retired, right? He's that type of quarterback. A Stanford quarterback for the past like 10 years under David Shaw, right? He's that type of guy. And he doesn't jump off the page or anything, but he does have those quality games. Another pro, he's a big body. He's 6'6", 230. He's huge. And NFL scouts fall in love with quarterbacks that are that big and can play that good. So, regardless, Josh Allen, for instance, had all the physical traits. He was a runner too, which McKee doesn't have as much. But one of the things that people loved about Josh Allen is that he was just huge. He was a big body that could absorb hits, could stand in the pocket, sees over all the linemen, obviously, because he's tall as hell, and can really push the ball downfield in one play because he has that huge arm. That's what McKee has. He has a big body. He can absorb hits. He's not going to get hurt too much. And he's just going to stand in the pocket, and he's kind of that big presence and has all the physical traits that you can develop. Davis Mills, what I didn't love about him as much is that he didn't have as strong of an arm. He was more of a mind type of guy, which a lot of the Stanford guys are, but they are usually big bodies. Davis Mills has a big body, but he's not really the strongest arm ever out there. He has a strong arm, but it's not, the best thing ever. McKee has that strong arm. He has that. So, there's differences and there's similarities between him and Mills. They both played the same system. Pretty much the same results for both in their college careers. But McKee just has more of those physical traits that I think in the right system can be developed. I doubt it. I'm more negative towards McKee. Look, you'll see that in the cons, but he does have elements that I understand why scouts are looking at him, especially with the bright spot games that guys like Josh Allen really didn't have much of in their careers. But McKee does, and he has physical traits that scouts like. So I can see where scouts are coming from. This isn't like something coming out of left field, right? I can see it. Some people on paper that don't, I don't want to say know as much, but don't look into it as much. Might not see really where scouts are coming from when people evaluate McKee so high, just looking at his college play. But I can see where they're coming from. I don't agree with it, but I see where they're coming from. McKee's a prototypical pocket passer, as I said, with the big body stuff. He's a prototypical pocket passer. He's just going to stand there in the pocket. He steps up. He's strong body. Stuff that Haener had, stepping up in the pocket, that you like to see, that he doesn't really get affected by the rush. McKee obviously is way taller and a bigger body, so naturally that's just going to happen. But he has that ability where he's going to stay strong in the pocket. He's not going to really let stuff happen to him, and he's going to keep his eyes downfield. And that's something that you want in a quarterback, and something really, really good that I think McKee has. Another thing, he has above a 60% completion percentage each season. So if we go into his stats real quick, 2021, his first year starting, he was 206 completions on 315 attempts for a 65.4% completion percentage. 2,300 yards, 15 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. So, a good completion percentage, especially for a college quarterback, kept the ball in play. Not a ton of trips to the end zone, and maybe not the best touchdown to interception ratio ever, but, was pretty conservative with the ball. And overall, just a decent completion percentage. In 2022, his attempts went up by a mile. Over 100 more attempts. He had 264 completions on 426 attempts. 62% completion percentage. Obviously, if you're going up 100 attempts, you're generally going to see your completion percentage drop. That just comes with volume. Generally, with quarterbacks, if you're not if you're Justin Herbert, that's different. But if you are a normal quarterback, a prospect, not in the NFL, you're going to have your percentage drop. And for 100 attempts, a 3% drop isn't too bad. 62%, especially in college, is still pretty good, even for a pocket passer. So
when you buy 10 tickets on Vivid Seats, you get
that's what we like out of that. McKee also 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a little bit of a drop off there, but again, volume. You would have liked the touchdowns to go up a little bit more. Maybe that's kind of on the wide receivers, the system. You could blame it on a lot of things, but having 2 less touchdowns aren't the most valuable thing ever, because this is the analogy that I use. Touchdowns aren't the best thing ever, because you could go down the field 40 times and just have the quarterback do all the work, and then get down to the 1 yard line, and then have the running back rush it in 40 times, right? Now, that's not a good season by the running back. That's just a goal line running back that stat padded 40 touchdowns on 1 yard, 2 yards, right? It's not the best. I know that's an unrealistic situation, but just to have a good analogy here. Quarterback did all the work, right? But they end the season with 0 touchdowns to 5 interceptions and 1,000,000 yards. Even because they didn't throw a touchdown, they still had a generational season, right? Even with a -5 touchdown interception ratio. So touchdowns aren't the most valuable thing ever. It's more yardage and completion percentage. That's the stuff that gets you downfield. As long as you're getting downfield, you want to have a good red zone quarterback. Of course, you're going to want to have, if you're going to pass it in the red zone, you're going to want to have good stuff like that. But ultimately, it's really the completion percentage and the yardage that is what you evaluate a quarterback off of. And if that stuff is good, then you're pretty much all set. You're pretty much all set if that stuff is good. So 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a little bit concerning, but not the biggest red flag ever if his completion percentage and his yardage are good, which they are. So as long as you're not making detrimental mistakes to the team, which he has a little bit of, we have that. He's also a 2-year starter in a Power 5 conference. It's a very important thing. He's obviously, if Tanner McKee was putting up these types of stats at Western Kentucky, he's not even close to a NFL prospect. But he's putting up this against good teams. And like I said with the BYU game, he's having a good game there. He's having good games against good teams. And that's something that you want out of a prospect. And when you're playing Power 5 teams all the time, You're maintaining a touchdown to interception ratio. That's positive. Like you're not Spencer Rattler, who is most of the season, besides for the breakout at the end of the season, right, having a negative touchdown to interception ratio, not having a good completion percentage, all that. McKee's maintaining himself while playing against really, really good competition. So that's something that should be valued in the length of the season. Game to game, it can be different, but overall, the year's work that he's got done is good, and that's against prospects that are going to be guys that he's playing against in the NFL. When you're playing against Power Five teams, I've said this again and again, those are the guys you're going to be playing against in the NFL. You're going to be playing corners from Oregon. You're going to be playing corners from USC, UCLA, all those top Pac 12 schools. You're going to be playing against them. Most of the time, you're not going to be playing, corners from Colgate, for instance, any FCS schools. You're not going to be playing a bunch of corners from, I don't know, San Diego State. There might be one or two from there, but you're not going to be playing a bunch of them. Majority of the time, they're not the best corners ever. But when you're playing against a Power Five team like Oregon, they're most of the time, every draft class, they're going to have 3 or 4 guys come out of that defense that you know you're going to at least play for a couple years, and some of those guys are going to break out and become guys that are 12-year NFL veterans, 10-year NFL veterans, and you're gonna play against twice a year if they're in your division. So that's good to evaluate off of. If they're playing good competition in college, that's the guys that they're gonna that you need a transition to be able to play. So if you can play against them well in college, generally, as long as you're suitable enough, you have enough traits to be able to transfer over to the NFL, you're going to be able to beat them in the NFL as well. So that's something that McKee has going good for him. He can also be mobile out of the pocket. I know I said he's a prototypical pocket passer, and he is, but if he needs to extend a play and he has some space, he can get that done. He is a little faster than I think his build really gives to him. I think if he was a much smaller guy, he'd be super mobile, but he's obviously tall, so he uses that to his strength. But McKee is pretty, mobile when he needs to be. He's not going to be mobile all the time. He's going to stick in the pocket most of the time. But if he's getting pressure and he has enough space, he can get out at least 5 yards to the right or to the left and let one go and get a couple yards here or there. So for a tall guy, that's pretty positive. I don't know if that's going to transition over to the NFL very well. Um, college, you're going to have more openings. Obviously, the NFL, you're going to have a bunch of pressure coming at you at all times. You have better players that are going to be getting in your face all the time. So I don't know if that's going to really transition super, super well. But at least for now, it's a good thing to at least see a quarterback of that size trying and making an effort to extend plays while he can. McKee can also go in the middle. He can go sideline and he can go to the seam. He can go anywhere over the field. Doesn't really have problems going in the middle. Anthony Richardson, a big quarterback that I evaluated earlier, can only really hit deep really well and can't hit short really well. McKee is a smart guy. He's like a Davis Mills. He can hit in the middle. He can get you methodically down the field like any pro quarterback would. And he can also hit some deep shots if he needs to. It can be inconsistent at times, but he can get you down up and down the field. So that is something that is valued in the NFL, and I think it's something McKee carries very well. That's going to be it for the pros. The cons will be coming up next while we take a quick break. And now on to the cons for Tanner McKee. So as I was saying earlier, he's super well. My first con, first of all, he's really inconsistent, and that is not good for a Power 5 quarterback. As I was saying earlier, his touchdown to interception ratios weren't the best things ever. He had 15 touchdowns to 7 interceptions in his sophomore season. In his junior season, he had 13 touchdowns for 8 interceptions. So, not very consistent there. But if we go game to game real quick, his first game was against Colgate, an FCS team that you should beat up pretty easily. Obviously, he had an 81% completion percentage, which is outstanding there. 308 yards, but still managed to throw an interception in those 27 attempts against a FCS team. Not the best ever. Against a USC team this season that had a defense that got picked apart by Tulane. He only had a 57% completion percentage on 35 attempts. He had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, so 2 mistakes there, and also bad completion percentage on 35 attempts. So don't like to see that. Against Washington, he had a pretty good game. In a loss, he had 65% completion percentage on 26 attempts for 286 yards, 3 touchdowns, but also threw a pick there. Then against Oregon, really bad game. Only threw for 166 yards on 33 attempts, 57% completion percentage, and 2 touchdowns. No interceptions there. But again, completion percentage was bad. He always has a negative in there no matter what. There's no like flawless perfect game for him. There's always a negative. Against Oregon State, he has 60% completion percentage on 33 attempts, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Notre Dame, actually, I said earlier, like 2 seconds ago, he had no flawless games. This one was kind of flawless. 26 attempts, 38 attempts, 26 completions, 288, 68% completion percentage, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Pretty good, and that was a win. So, he had 57 attempts against Arizona State, but had a 58% completion percentage on those attempts, 320 yards and an interception. Against UCLA, who was a good team this year, had his worst game of the year. 29 attempts, 115 yards only, 45% completion percentage, which is just atrocious. 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Then the just bad games piled up until he picked it up at the end of the season against Washington State. They got obliterated. He threw for 236 yards on 40 attempts with 57% completion percentage. No picks, though, but 57% completion percentage. Against Utah, he had 23 attempts, 155 yards, and a 48% completion percentage. No interceptions, though. But again, it's either the interceptions are really high, the interceptions are effing him up really bad, or it's the completion percentage is really low. And one of his highs that I mentioned earlier is that, like, he has a good overall season completion percentage, but it's bloated because he has an 81% completion percentage against Colgate. Okay, anybody can have 81% completion. No offense to Colgate, but anyone can have an 81% completion percentage against Colgate if you're a Power 5 team. I mean, come on. And then he only has 4 games that are above 60% completion percentage in all of 2022, and then the rest are just 50s, to 40% completion percentage games against good teams. Like, it's not good. That's on the quarterback completely, and it's just ugly. It's ugly to look at. Against Cali, bounced back, 45 attempts, 64% completion percentage, but threw an interception there. Also lost the game in the BYU game that I mentioned earlier. You know how he did. Yeah, good. Kind of saved himself a little bit there from just being absolutely atrocious. In 2021, against Kansas State, good game. Only 18 attempts, 118 yards, 83% completion percentage, 1 touchdown. This whole entire start to his career was really nice. Was really nice in terms of not throwing interceptions. Completion percentage was iffy, but the first few games were good, and then it kind of fell off. Against USC last year was all right. 234 yards on 23 attempts, 69.6% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Vanderbilt wasn't the best team ever, but 29 attempts, 218 yards, 65% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. UCLA, good team. 32 attempts, 293, 59.4% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Good. ASU, 27 completions, 45 attempts, 356 yards, 60% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. So once they finally gave him a huge workload, he faltered and started throwing picks. And that lost them the Arizona State game. And there was just a really a fall off. The Washington State game was pretty good for him. 71% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Really, really good game for him. One of the best games of his career. Then he falls off a cliff. Washington, 194, 65% completion percentage, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That hurt them. 7-point game. Lost that one because of that. Against Cal, he had 26 completions on 44 attempts, 239, a 59% completion percentage and 2 picks and no touchdowns. Wasn't good there. Against Notre Dame, he only had 25 attempts and had 172, so wasn't really throwing it downfield too much. Just kind of dinging and dunking, taking what they had. They lost 45-14 that game, so wasn't really, doing much at all, and had 1 touchdown and 0 interceptions. So he's just super inconsistent. He has flashes, yes. He has flashes, but the doom and gloom that he brings to most games aren't good. He doesn't make good decisions on the field. You can see that on tape. He makes very questionable decisions, and there's just throws that, like, he's a strong arm guy that he just like underthrows. He doesn't seem like he's giving it enough. Like there's not enough there really. My second con is he's a loser. I mean, no offense to like him, but he's a flat out he's a loser, statistically at least. This kid, and this can be on team. You can have good quarterbacks that lose a lot in college and then they play really well. Josh Allen is a big example for like everything statistical going wrong, but having all the physical traits. McKee has physical traits. He doesn't have those physical traits. He has like okay physical traits that are getting him just enough to get into the draft conversation of being like a top guy. But he's a loser. He won 3 games against USC, Vanderbilt, and Oregon. Decent wins in 2021, but only 3 wins there. And then in 2022, what do you know? He matched it. 3 wins. One of them is against Colgate. The other 2, Notre Dame and Arizona State. So didn't really, he won some big games in his first year. His second year, not really that much. One of them is Colgate. So if you put a real opponent there, that's probably another loss. He only wins 2. So you have 6 wins on his career. Generally, you'd want that in 1 season, but 2 seasons starting, McKee has 6 wins. Generally, if you're a good quarterback in college football, like a Jake Haener, for instance, you can lift the team that's not too good and kind of lift them into relevance. As I was saying earlier, in the last episode, and I think a little bit earlier in this episode, if you're a good quarterback, you're making your receivers better by putting the ball where only they can go get it. McKee doesn't do that. McKee just kind of puts it and lets the wide receiver go do the work, and he doesn't really make the team around him better. He doesn't make up for their faults at all. He's more of kind of a system guy that you just plug in, and you kind of have to put a lot of talent around him to win games. And that's evident in him only winning 6 games. And that's, I think, a huge red flag and something that I was looking at while evaluating him. And, you see 6 wins and you're kind of like, okay, does he have physical traits that I could develop that, in a good mind that I could make work here? And yeah, he has a strong arm, but so does a lot of the quarterbacks in this draft class. And like, there's just a lot more genetically gifted and guys that practice a lot more and that have better skills that they built on that are in this class that I think are just valued so much more than McKee and can be better quarterbacks than McKee. And when you have a quarterback that's losing all this time, he's super inconsistent, has physical traits but not the best physical traits ever, that's just a quarterback that's set up for failure. He has very bad games, as I went over before with the inconsistent stuff. He's gonna have good games, like decent games, maybe twice out of every season, out of like 10 games. But then those other 8 games are gonna be absolutely horrible. He's gonna either not throw the ball in the right spot, and you're gonna have a 40% completion percentage. You're gonna go 3 and out all the time, or you're going to get downfield, and then he's gonna throw a costly pick because he underthrew a ball with a strong frame. Like a 6'6" guy shouldn't be underthrowing balls. Like, if you have that strong of an arm, you shouldn't be underthrowing balls. But Tanner McKee does it constantly. If you watch any of his film, he just floats it. He floats the ball everywhere, even when it's not like a even if it's not a fade route or anything where you're actually supposed to float the ball. Like if it's just like a go and he's supposed to laser it in tight coverage, he's just gonna float that thing and it's gonna fall like 5 yards before the wide receiver. With maybe like if you're throwing a go on like the 40, he's gonna throw it to like the 20. His arm strength isn't there. Okay, it's not there, and it's there sometime. You can pull up a clip and say, "Oh, whoa, okay, McKee threw a 50-yard bomb here, and he looked really good." Well, first of all, the wide receiver has like 5 yards of separation, and he's not going to throw the ball short every single time. But if you look at example A, B, C, and D here, he threw it way short all those other times. So, like, he's I can't stress enough, he has bad games, and it's because of just so many factors in terms of the completion percentages and the interceptions. Like, it's all over the place. The ball placement isn't there for a quarterback that should be smart and should be is in a system with David Shaw that, like, you have to be a smart quarterback to manage. And I think the 3 games won each season kind of reflect that. Tanner McKee kind of got David Shaw fired. I think if they had a little bit of better quarterback in there, you know, they'd be a little bit better. And maybe he'd have a job. But like, I just I can't see the pros outweighing the cons with McKee. It's just there's nothing flat. The next con, nothing flashy, nothing flashy. Not the strongest arm ever. He has a strong arm, but for strong arms, it's not a strong arm. It's the bottom tier of strong arms. Like, he can toss it 60. He can get there, but as I said, he's underthrowing a bunch. He'll it's like a flip of a coin. He's either going to underthrow it 10, or he's going to overthrow it a bunch, or this is the accuracy is not there. You can train that in. You can train that in. But I think at Stanford, college like that, you'd probably already be trained up pretty well with that type of thing. There's a lot of smart coaches over there, very NFL type of thing. Um, I just, he seems like I can't, I've never had a conversation with him. I can't evaluate his mind. I'd love to, but from what it looks like, he just doesn't have the mind to, I think, adapt to it. I don't think he has that. And even the skills that he does have, I just don't think even if he did adapt, he's not going to be too high like of a prospect. He's not going to be crazy amazing with it. So, you know, he struggles to put the ball in the front of the receiver again, underthrows everything, and he relies on the receiver to go get it. You'll see it with his. I think it's a thing with his like height, is he doesn't know how to angle the ball down to shorter wide receivers, because it seems that he just kind of, as I said earlier, he airs the ball a lot. It's not really a laser throw. He just kind of floats it, and that's fine on fade routes and kind of like stuff in the end zone where, as long as you're placing the ball in front of the corner, where only the wide receiver can get it and he can kind of fall into it. But most of the time, he's putting and you'll see it in the film a little bit later, he's putting the ball up where the wide receiver has to like go jump vertical for it, pull it down by the tips of his fingers, and just kind of come in and get it. And on go routes, he does the same thing where he'll throw it up and the wide receiver will have to turn a million times and then go over the defender and do all this like convulsing. Like, I think the receivers aren't getting enough credit for how much Tanner McKee has put them through hell. Um, and I think you saw the same. When I was evaluating Romeo Dobbs is an amazing jump ball wide receiver, and Carson Strong, the quarterback of Nevada, who threw to him last year, knew that. But Strong got super over evaluated by draft experts, and not so much by scouts, because Strong got, and they used the injury excuse, but I think it was more just looking at him personally, because I didn't love Carson Strong last year either. He really just threw it up like all the time, and that's something Tanner McKee does. And if you're just throwing it up, like, anybody can throw it up if you have arm strength, right? Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that can just throw it up. You need pinpoint accuracy to be in the NFL, and McKee doesn't have it. He just throws it up. And Carson Strong ended up being an undrafted free agent. The scouts had the right call on that. We haven't heard from him at all this year. It's probably, I don't even know what team he was on the Eagles practice squad. I don't know if he's still there anymore. That's really where I'd value McKee around. I think scouts need to make the right call and, pull a Carson Strong on him, let him hit undrafted free agency, maybe bring him in for a training camp. But I just don't think he has the skills to do it because he just throws the ball up all the time. And I think I don't know if Stanford fans are really a defender of him or not. If I get blowback for that, but I mean that's that's what I got on that one. That's gonna be it for those cons. So the comparisons that I have for him, I think it's really easy comparison. His ceiling is Davis Mills. He could start maybe a couple of years, put up similar numbers to Davis Mills. They literally played the same system in college. They're basically the same body type. They do the same type of throws. Again, Mills has really good games. Not, I shouldn't say really good games, but good games, right? He can manage a little bit every once in a while. But then for a couple of those games, right, it's just all over the place. Interceptions, like 0 for 3, 40% completion percentage, just nothing there. And I think Mills is a better prospect because I think he had like at least he had decent completions. Like at least in the NFL, he's translated better over well. Is what I'm trying to say. I'm jumbled all over right now. But McKee's not going to have that. He's going to have low completion percentage. I think in the NFL, he's going to throw it up all the time. Like if he gets on a team with small wide receivers, he is going to go through hell because he's not going to be able to know what to do with the ball. I think he's just going to, it's like an alien world for him if he doesn't have a tall wide receiver that can just jump for the ball for him. So his ceiling is Davis Mills. And I think Mills is going to be out of the league pretty soon, or he's just going to be a decent backup. That's pretty much what McKee's going to be. He's not going to be a long-term starter in the league, I don't think, at all. And his floor is Paxton Lynch. At least Lynch, right, had some mobility to him. McKee doesn't have a ton of that at all. I think McKee is overvalued like Paxton Lynch was. I think he has a strong arm that people overvalue like Paxton Lynch did. I think that McKee, isn't accurate like Paxton Lynch was. At least in college, Paxton Lynch was a little bit more accurate, but I don't think they have the brain to translate over to the league. And I think McKee's not going to get drafted as high as the first round. I hope not. I hope nobody makes that bad of a mistake. But I think we see McKee playing the same role as Paxton Lynch has. Maybe has one game, and then gets benched, and 3 years later out of the league and finding himself in the USFL or the XFL or whatever league is going on in 3 years from now for the minors, and probably playing a backup role over there. So I don't think McKee's going to really do anything, to be honest. I know it's harsh, but just as a scout, I like evaluating as a scout. I don't see it in McKee. I don't see it for all the reasons that I've listed with the cons and just some of the pros just not being too good. I just don't see it in him. I'm going to grade him a D plus. That's one of my harshest grades I think I've given out for a quarterback. Malik Willis, I'm not even sure if I gave out a D plus. I might have given it a D or a D plus. This could be the lowest ranking that I've given a prospect, regardless of position. I'm not sure. You guys have got, you know what? You guys go and watch some and listen to some previous episodes, and you can find out for yourself. But this is a pretty low ranking. I've evaluated all the quarterbacks already from this draft class. This is the lowest ranking that I've given a quarterback thus far. I've evaluated, I think, 8. This is the lowest one. So McKee is 8th. And most draft boards, he's like 5th, second, third round type of guy. I value McKee as an undrafted free agent. Maybe a priority undrafted free agent just to give him a little bit of a shot, see what happens. But I don't see it with him. I wouldn't pick him up. I wouldn't spend a 7th round draft pick on McKee. I just don't. I don't see it in him, and I don't really give a lot of value to him. So we'll see what happens there. Let's look at a little bit of this tape really quick from his 2022 season. Here's a pass that I actually like. He rolls out right. This is right in the back end zone. Good placement, but he's wide open again, and it's the tall thing. He like airs it. This one against Washington, 17-0, wide open, 5 yards of space. Another one against Washington, 30-7. Play fake. That one's a good ball to the 20. Puts it right over the corner in tight space. This one, the wide receiver does all the work. With 14 minutes left in the fourth, number 5, he pushes off. This one's a nice throw against Oregon up the seam. It's like a 30-yard touchdown to number 6. It's pretty good. Good throw. He's staring him down the whole way, though. But it was his first read. He was open. Gunned it in. That's a nice throw. This one, gun. Pretty good gun there against Oregon State. But again, really up high. Just kind of airs it. Against Arizona State, he has one where he really just, it's like not there. This one here against ASU gets hit as he throws, but behind the receiver, just like a routine like out route, can't get it. This one on the run, nice little throw there to get it onto the 21. Gets UCLA here. This wasn't a good game for him. Steps back, guns it. Nice little tight window throw, but nothing too special about that one. Here in the end zone, 2 fakes, and then just a like floater. What I'm saying is like he floats the ball way too much. He just does, and I don't see it in McKee. Do you see it in McKee? I don't know. Give me some feedback here if you like Tanner McKee, but I just simply don't. Maybe you guys see some things that I don't, but from my perspective, I just don't like Tanner McKee. So that's going to be it for the Scouting Board episode 10. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow me on Instagram. Follow the show on Instagram at Second Take Show. We post all the Scouting Board stuff over there and my other podcast, Second Take, that I do with 2 other buddies of mine. You can also follow me on Twitter at BillySRP. You can follow, you can watch us. I don't know what you're watching us on right now, but you can watch all the podcasts that we upload on YouTube, or you can listen on any podcast platform, Second Take or the Scouting Board. These on YouTube will be under Second Take's channel. So when in doubt, just look up Second Take. You'll find it. You can also find all of our written publication stuff, all of our articles that I write, and Alejandro, my friend that does Second Take with me. We write, a few other people. You can find that at medium.com. Go on medium.com, search up Second Take. You'll find all our articles there. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will be back with another episode really soon. Love you guys. Thank you for all the support, and I'll see you in the next one.